If 2026 is your year to add a field marketing strategy to the mix, listen up. We're going to learn some great tips on getting started with field marketing in today's episode of Closing Time. Thanks for tuning into Closing Time, the show for go-to-market leaders. I'm Val Riley, head of marketing for Unbounce, Insightly, and LeadsRx. Today, I'm joined by Jon Kazarian. He is CEO of Accelevents, an event management software platform. Jon, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
So first, let's set the stage a little bit and talk about how the event marketing space is evolving and maybe some trends you're seeing in the last few years.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the biggest trends we're seeing is the increased spend on events as a proportion of marketing budgets. Historically, that was in the 25% range. We're starting to see that crawl up into the 35, even 40% range for a lot of organizations. And that's split between owned events, think like product launches and customer events, field marketing events that I know we're going to be chatting about, and then third-party events. So participating in a trade show or some other industry event.
And what do you attribute that increase to?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of factors there. One of which is that there's a lot more people working from home today, and people are looking for ways to connect, to get together face to face. It's really this movement towards the connection economy instead of just the attention economy. The other element is that traditional digital marketing channels, they're just so saturated right now. I mean, we're on a podcast. I don't want to knock on podcasts, but obviously there's a lot of them out there, right? And everybody has learned every mechanism for SEO, for generating content online, for social selling on LinkedIn, whatever that might be. But the thing that you can't fake is connecting face to face. And what we're doing, what we're seeing from our customers is that focus on creating those experiences for potential buyers, for customers, bringing them together, and often in more niche, more intimate experiences, field marketing events that could be a dinner, or we just hosted an event at Topgolf on the back of an industry event. Those different opportunities to bring people together and really create a lasting experience that they're going to remember a lot longer than an ad impression.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, there's always going to be the big ones, right? The CESs of the world or the huge AWS shows. But I am seeing, just as a marketer in the MarTech space, a lot more like micro events or smaller scale events where there is that intimacy, like you're saying, and really cultivating that face-to-face engagement.
Absolutely. And one of the other elements is that you have people today where like they don't have a counterpart within their organization. And for them to have somebody else to bounce ideas off of, to almost commiserate with, they're not going to find that within their company. They have to find that elsewhere. And there's not that many environments that exist for that to happen. And if you as a brand, as a company, can bring people together who are going through the same challenges and struggles and looking for the same information and learnings, and they can share and grow together, you become the epicenter of that. And I think the companies that are succeeding today are building a brand around that, around helping their customers, not just through their product, but through their community.
That's a great point. Being the sole practitioner in an organization has always been lonely, but I think when you add in the layer of working from home, that person probably feels that much more isolated. So events might be a really nice way to scratch that itch. So good point.
Yeah. And the other thing that we're seeing is that you've got these remote companies where they're using third-party events as a way to get their remote teams together. So they might bring more people than they ordinarily would, because it's like killing two birds with one stone. You're turning a marketing opportunity into an offsite.
Yeah, great point. Dual purpose, and someone else is putting the agenda together, and you just get to fly everybody in and have some good team bonding. That's a great point. So let's talk about leads that we generate from examples like you just stated, digital marketing or a podcast or a content piece, versus leads that we are generating from an event, because it feels like they're a lot further down the funnel in general.
I'd argue that. Everybody online says that, 3% or 5% of potential buyers are in market at any given point in time. When you're at an event, at a trade show, hosting your own event, well, sure, if you're hosting your own event, the people that are coming, either customers or prospects that are heavily in the consideration set. But if you're doing something like a field marketing event that's a dinner, or attending a third-party event, or hosting a side event on the back of a third-party event, those folks often are not as far down the buying cycle. But the opportunity with that is you're creating that impression that doesn't fade after they scroll, another inch down the page. You're having an engagement, you're looking in the eye, you're having a conversation that they're going to remember 9 months from now when they might be in market. And that's where we think a lot of the power comes from. So it's not just, that somebody is necessarily a better quality lead because you met them at an event. Plenty of people go to a third-party event, they capture a bunch of leads, and frankly, that's, it just turns into spam in other people's inboxes. It gets you unsubscribed, which is worse.
Yeah, and definitely impression retention, I think, is a great way to describe that.
Exactly.
So let's say you're speaking to a mid-market company. A lot of listeners to Closing Time are in that space, and they don't have any sort of event marketing budget in place, or field marketing, or hosted or sponsored. What tips would you give them to get started? Like, what's a good first way to get into an event? And I'm specifically speaking of an event that you're owning, that you're hosting.
So I would start, I think you've got two angles to start. One is starting with digital. So starting to build your audience by providing content via webinar or more structured virtual event. I do think we've seen a movement towards online as the best mechanism for distributing content. If people are going to travel, if they're going to meet in person, they're not looking for content as much as they used to, because there's enough other ways to get that. They're looking for connection, right? The connection economy. And when it comes to getting started there, I think the best way to start is not by yourself. It's by finding partners who you can cross-sell with. Maybe it's agencies that deploy your product. Maybe it's partners that you integrate with. Get together with them, share the costs. We do this. We did 11 events last year. I think we've done 9 or 10 so far this year. And for most of them, we don't host them by ourselves. We host them with 2 to 4 different partners and share the cost. And when it comes to a dinner, we'll generally target getting somewhere between like 25 to 32 prospects in the room. And we're not the only ones doing the invites there. Our partners are doing that as well. And all in to host a dinner obviously depends on the city, but you're looking at somewhere around $8,000. And then you split that up with the other partners that you're co-hosting with. So the cost could be a couple of grand. Obviously, you have to, travel to and from the city and cover the hotel. But by and large, your cost per head, even with travel, should come in somewhere between $300 to $450.
I really like that idea of starting small and working with partners, because it really does de-risk it a bit. I'm thinking of myself as an attendee. If you're working with partners, you're giving me more reasons to consider attending. Like, maybe I use one of those platforms, and maybe I possibly need one of those other platforms, and another one I've heard of, and or vendor I've heard of, but maybe haven't really considered yet. So when you're partnering like that, you're increasing the chances that prospects are going to show up, because there's just more for them to learn and be exposed to.
Yeah, and if they're an existing customer of one of your partners and that partner recommends you, it's the trust. You have some conviction that those two companies are well integrated because they're willing to host dinners together. There's just a lot more trust that comes out of that. The other thing I'll say is, when it comes to doing those dinners, it's not just about putting people in the room together. It does need to be facilitated. You have to go into it with an agenda. One of the things that we do is we print out a little slip of paper, 2 actually, and put it at every plate within the dinner. One question is a personal question, and one is an industry related question. And we have everybody in the room go around and take 30 seconds per question, answer that. And it gets everybody talking, and it just warms up the room. It's not like you're siloed to the 3 people that are sitting around you.
Oh, the introvert inside of me, my heart is singing to hear that, because it can be challenging to make small talk. So you really are giving people at least a jumping off point. So when you finish that around the room, now you've given folks conversation topics to keep the conversation going.
We actually facilitate the conversation and even beyond that. So we do a little bit of sort of cocktail style in the beginning for 20, 30 minutes. We almost always run long during the dinner portion, but then we'll have other talking points that usually originate from some of those questions or some of the answers to those questions. But it's really it's too easy for people to drift into conversations that aren't about why we're all together. People love to talk about their kids. We were, doing that a second ago. But that's not why they're at the dinner.
So you're saying, okay, we shoot for 28, 30 people. We're co-hosting with other firms. Let's say we get, a good number of RSVP yeses. what's the attrition rate? How, like on the day of the event, what can you realistically expect as a show rate?
Yeah. So generally speaking, we see about 90% show rate for the dinners. The only time we saw less than that was a snowstorm in New York. So, school cancellation is pretty reasonable. But then there's other events that will do sidecar events in the back of an industry event, and the attrition rate is much higher there. So we just did an event at Topgolf in Vegas on the back of IMEX, which is the largest industry event. We used our platform, Accelevents, for registration and approvals. We had about 275 applicants. We approved about 215. We only had about 100 show up. And that's because on the back of those other events, people are getting invited to so many different things. The other thing is, and this was on us or on where Topgolf is located, it wasn't walkable. So you also have to think about what are the barriers for somebody to attend when you're doing a third-party event on the back of an industry event.
That's a great point, because you have to factor in the Uber and the expense of the Uber and getting an Uber. And some of those big conferences, that can be a challenge when there's, 60 or 80,000 people in town. So that type of an event, I've heard it referred to as a sidecar event. So in that case, you're not taking on all the risk, right? You're adding on to an existing conference or event. You're looking for a spot in the agenda where maybe there's a gap and you can find a location that's nearby and sort of hijack the traffic. So tell me, like, what qualities do you look for that would make a sidecar event successful?
Yeah. So usually they take place in the evening. We're seeing more and more people do morning ones because you're competing with less other events at that time, but it depends on your ICP and your audience. And like, if you know that one of the elements of the event is a big party the night before, don't do a morning event the next day after. As for what makes it successful, it's really about finding third-party events that your ICP is at, or a high enough concentration of your ICP is at. So again, we're in the events industry. IMEX, which is the big event industry event, is a perfect event for us to do that at. Dreamforce, on the other hand, yes, there's a lot of event people there, but they probably make up less than 1% of the total attendee base. So it's a lot harder to filter through and find the right folks to get to our third-party event. So that'd be one that we wouldn't do a third-party event at.
So you mentioned Topgolf. I imagine things that are going to woo people away from that conference agenda or away from their break time has to be pretty appealing, like a wine tasting or something. Like, you just feel out the type of event and the type of prospect that you're after and try to fit something with that personality type, the buyer persona.
Exactly. But I would avoid trying to pull them out of the main event. You're not going to get them to leave in the middle of the day, especially if it's an industry association event and there's like continuing education credit. They don't even have the option to leave. So you have to be mindful of those things. The other thing is a lot of the events have sanctioned events in the evening, so you got to work around those gaps as well. But a lot of events don't provide dinners, so that's a great opportunity because you're filling a gap, you're saving people money. So you're giving them a good reason to come and join your event as well. And yes, find something that's interesting to your ICP that also makes sense given the location. So like I was at an event in Austin and there was a couple of groups that did barbecue tasting, right? That's kind of like a local fun thing to do. And while you're in that city, why not?
Right, because you're going to get home and everyone's going to say, did you try the barbecue? And if you say, well, I just ate hotel food the whole time, it's not going to be that cool. So I like that idea very much. Or, if you're in the San Francisco Bay Area and, with wine country right there, that could be an interesting way to catch people's attention.
Yeah. When Inbound was in Boston, we would rent out boats in Boston Harbor and take people through for boat cruises. But we kept it in the afternoon after most of the content was done and then sort of leading into sunset. So like, Boston is a very nautical city. We leaned into that.
That sounds great. Yeah, just kind of working off of a theme of the area and taking it to the next level. Mm-hmm. So on the sidecar events, can we talk a little bit about cost? Because it does seem like that's a great way for a company to get started. But what might be a cost per head there?
So for Topgolf, we ended up paying $52 per attendee. And then we paid for the different golf bays. And those were a couple hundred bucks each. You definitely want to plan for attrition there. And then keep in mind the other things that we talked about what the drop off could be depending on the location, time, et cetera. But if you're not doing a dinner, it's going to be cheaper, especially if you're not paying for transport. Something like the boats that we did in Boston Harbor, we happened to have, shout out to Andrew, somebody on the sales team who had a membership with a boat club. And we were able to use that. Hopefully he got some tax write-off on that. And it cost us next to nothing. We bought some, rosé and cups and took folks out. And it doesn't have to be expensive. It's just about getting started.
Okay, so the message there is work your connections. I also just think about some of the numbers you threw out there. And when I think about what we pay Google for our CPL, $50 or $100 to pay for our golf and refreshments doesn't really seem too out of bounds at all.
Yes, but if you're paying $50 per CPL, they're probably getting on a phone and going through a demo. Somebody gets on a boat with us, that doesn't mean they're getting on a demo. It builds brand awareness. It puts them on our sort of roadmap, but it's not pipeline.
Yeah, I love how you think $50 is a demo for us, because it is by far not. But thank you for that. Depends on how competitive your space is.
Yeah.
We'll tell you the CRM space is hyper competitive. But again, we were talking about like future funnel, right? Like that's the idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And building brand. That's the other thing. When it comes to events, it's not just about looking at it from a CPL perspective. It's building brand. I think one of the things that worked well for us at this industry event is we made a ton of noise about the Topgolf event that we were hosting, and the number of people that we had registered and attended also helped to just get the word out about our brand and had people coming by and asking about it. So the other thing is, when you're doing one of those events, make as much noise as you can. When we do these dinners, everybody on our team who's at the dinner writes a summary of what they learned and posts that on LinkedIn. And we share some of the photos. We hire a photographer for about $300. Again, split that cost with our other partners. We share the photos with everybody who is there. They post, they tag. We don't ask them to. They just do it because it was a good experience for them. And it's not something they often have access to because nobody else is bringing that community together.
We're always looking for social content too. So that's a fantastic idea. Add a photographer and encourage social posting. I love it.
Yeah. Let me add one thing to that. I suggest only a photographer and not a videographer.
People won't open up as much. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Really good point. So tell me a little bit about Accelevents. Your firm provides event management software. How does your software help companies with an event strategy?
Yeah. So we're the software to facilitate everything from event landing pages and registration to the badge printing and check-in experience, mobile app for attendees, even virtual events. And we bring that all under one roof. So our customers will use us for their largest user conferences, 30, 40,000 person user conferences, to small 20, 30 person dinners and field marketing events. So it kind of runs a gamut, but it allows you to bring everything in one house, integrate it with your marketing automation platform or CRM so that all of that event activity flows back to your sales and marketing team.
Awesome. Jon, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us today. Where can folks find you, Accelevents, just to learn more about event marketing in general?
Yeah, accelevents.com, ACCEL events.com. I'm also very active on LinkedIn, so shoot me a connection request. It's Jon Kazarian on LinkedIn.
Yep, I recommend Jon as a follow. That's how we found him and really enjoy your content. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. Remember, you can get this episode of Closing Time delivered right to your inbox if you click the link in the show notes, and we'll see you next week.